This is Jacqueline White of the Fannin County Historical Commission. Today is Wednesday, December 16th, 2009, and I'm going to be speaking with Mr. Joe R. Morrow. Joe?
I'm Joe Morrow. My mother and dad were Mildred and Joe T. Morrow. They both were born and grew up around the Bonham area. My mother from north of town and my dad in town. Well, matter of fact, he was born in Honey Grove, but when he was very young, they moved to Bonham. And he had one sister, Hilda. He was born in 1912, and she was born in 1915. He joined the United Methodist Church in Bonham in 1921, and he and his father went there. My dad never talked much about his childhood life. My mother talked a lot about hers. She was born north of Ivanhoe, and she and her brother and sister had quite a piece to go to school, so they had their dad had this old horse, and they would ride the horse. One of them would walk, and two of them would ride the horse, and they'd take turns. And she had a lot of brothers and sisters. There were 9 children in the family. Her youngest brother got killed in World War II, and her next youngest brother was in the Army. They were both in the South Pacific. My grandmother and grandfather on my mother's side, he came from Arkansas, and her family moved here from Alabama. They got married, I think she was 14, and he was not much older. He was probably 18. And after about 2 years, they started having children. And my mother's mother, she came from Arkansas also, and she died when my grandmother was young. And my grandfather left. He left all the kids with my mother's aunt, and basically she raised my grandmother's family. And then my mother's father, with the 9 children, he died when he was 40 of a heart attack. And my grandmother lived just south of the Red River in a tiny house with all these kids. And the two in the Army, the oldest kids were gone by then. My mother and her next younger sister and my Uncle Leon, they were all gone and married, but there was still a lot of kids around the house. My mother went to school in Bonham. She went to Ivanhoe, and then she went to high school in Bonham, rode the bus every day. And I think she got out of school in 1934, I believe was her graduation year. But my dad's life was, he had a hard time when he was young. He told my mother once that after his dad got remarried, he would go to DeKalb to see his grandmother, and he'd hitchhike, and he said it was about 100 miles, and he couldn't always make it in a day, so he would just park himself in a field close to the road, and when he'd hear a car in the morning, he'd get back out there. He said usually the mornings were the best anyway to go. And his grandmother and grandfather lived in DeKalb. She came from Tennessee, and my great-grandfather came from Alabama. There's a small place, the place where they lived was east of Decatur, Alabama, and there was 3 generations of the family lived there. There's a small cemetery and a real big wheat field now that my great-great-grandfather and his father and his grandfather are all buried there together with their wives and some of their children. It's a tiny cemetery, but there's always a path to it through the wheat field. My great-great-grandfather had they had, I think, 8 children, and 5 of the sons were in the Confederate Army. That pretty well decimated the family because one of them, two of them died, one in a prison camp and one in a battle. And my great-great-grandfather got bit by a rattlesnake on the toe and died. So his father, Samuel, was there. He moved there with his mother and father. They moved there in about 1790, and they moved from South Carolina. Samuel's father's name was Robert, and he married Jane Pedden, who, when they were in South Carolina, the Morrow family came to Norfolk, and about 3 generations of my grandparents lived there, and then David moved to Baltimore, and from Baltimore they moved to South Carolina, and then South Carolina to Alabama, and then my grandfather moved to Texas, where he had a sister that lived in Nacogdoches at the time. So I guess it was somewhat familiar to them to go back. There was one of my great-grandfather's sisters traveled back and forth to Alabama about every 2 years to bring things that her mother had sewed for her kids, and just to visit and keep up with the family. Anyway, my dad, get back to my father, my mother went to school, like I said, and my father went to school for some time, but he also started working a lot. There was a Mr. Reeves around 1922, 23, I guess, started letting him help around the print shop. So that's how he learned how to be a printer, and that was what he did most of his life. After he moved to Wolf City, he worked at the Wolf City Sun for several years, and besides working at the newspaper, he also operated a projector at the movies. I think usually Friday and Saturday night. And about that same time, he decided he needed a store, so he had it was called Wolf City Radio and Electric, and he sold radios and televisions and the records, the vinyl records, big 78 RPM records. And when he worked at the theater, he got me to work there. I sold popcorn and soda. And then on Saturday night, it was real late, and I'd have to stay up there and watch the movie with him before we went home. And my whole life when I was young, he carried me everywhere. If he had to go to Dallas to buy something for the print shop or to buy something for the radio shop, he always took me. And as soon as he bought the newspaper in Ladonia, I had to go to work there. So that was his next venture. He bought the newspaper in Ladonia and was running it, and then the fellow that owned the newspaper in Honey Grove passed away, Mr. Flagger. And when he died, he had told his wife that he wanted my dad to have the newspaper if he would do it when he passed away. So my dad bought it from her. And then he had 2 newspapers, and during all this time, he was also very active in the Masonic Lodge. He went through the chairs and was a Grand Master, and my mother belonged to the Eastern Star. And from that time forward, he did a lot of Masonic burial ceremonies. He did all over North Texas. People would call him to do those. So he always was really busy. My mother talked a lot about him not being home enough. My 2 brothers, Jeff was born in 1941, and Michael was born in 1947. We had a lot of good vacations. We never went very far, but we really had a good time. And I went to school at Wolf City, and when I graduated from high school, my parents moved to Honey Grove. and lived there for until my dad passed away. And my brothers went to. My younger brother went to school in Honey Grove for 10 years, and my Jeff, my next brother, went to school, high school in Honey Grove, and then Jeff went to Texas Tech, and my brother Michael went to Southern Arkansas. He was a real good sports guy. He was all state in high school in football and basketball, and he got a basketball scholarship and went to school there. And then he was lovesick, so after a couple of years he moved back so he could see his girlfriend. She was going to East Texas State University now. Back to my first memory, when I was about 4 years old, my dad's Aunt Kitty died here in Bonham, and that's my first memory of going to Wise Funeral Home to that funeral, and sitting in a folding chair with my feet sticking straight out. I was so short. I had always thought it was upstairs, but my mother told me a few years ago that there was not an upstairs there, that I was thinking about going up the stairs to the front porch. That was 1941. In the next few years, I had two uncles that were in the Army, Uncle Horace and Uncle Kenneth. They were in the same area of the Southern Pacific during the war, and my Uncle Horace I think he had been in the Army maybe 6 months or a year, and he was killed on an island over there. And then when my Uncle Horace came back, he was really shell shocked. He had to stay in a place in San Antonio for a while, and my grandmother wanted to go down to see him, and she wanted me to go with her because my Aunt Hilda lived in San Antonio, and I could visit her and stay with her. So I went with my grandmother. We rode the bus to Dallas to the train station and rode the train to San Antonio. It was like, I don't remember, at least an all-day or all-night trip. And that was a big deal for me because I was 7, 8 years old. After my Uncle Horace died in the service, for some reason, after my grandmother had found out, my mother and dad decided it'd be a good idea for me to spend a couple of weeks with her that summer. And she lived just south of the Red River, and she would, I couldn't stay around the house much because she'd cry real loud, and I'd stay away until I'd hear the crying settle down, then I'd come back to the house. Before the war, when they used to tell a story about the boys were listening to a radio when Joe Louis was boxing someone in a championship heavyweight fight, and the battery on their radio, they didn't have electricity, and the battery on their radio ran down, so Horace and Kenneth had to get on the horse and ride down to the neighbors that had a radio to listen to the rest of the fight. And there was, we always had a good time going there. My brother and I, it was a big deal to see who could see the bridge first because we knew we were almost to her house by then. But anyway, after the war, my youngest brother Mike was born, and I guess about 1953 or 54, by then my dad had started, we were printing the Ladonian and Honey Grove newspapers, and there was a fire at the newspaper at Honey Grove, and it burned basically everything, all the old editions, ruined all the equipment. And it was hard. He printed the paper at other places while we gathered up equipment. He got a mover from Wolf City to take a semi-trailer to Georgetown. He bought all the equipment at a newspaper there, and we loaded it on that truck and brought it back. This was after it took a long time for them to get that building. They had to rebuild the building, of course. And anyway, after that, the paper stayed the same place the rest of his life. He had it printed in usually in Paris, sometimes for a long time in Sulphur Springs. He would carry the newspaper to be printed because when papers changed from letterpress to offset, it was a lot better to take it somewhere and let them print it on the offset press rather than setting the type and stuff and printing it yourself. As I say, my dad was still very involved in the lodge, and my mother was, by then she was working, she worked most every day in the office, doing clerical work and proofreading and answering the phone for him if he was talking. He liked to talk to people a lot and spent a lot of time at the coffee shop. Another thing I remember, of course, I always had to work at the either the radio shop or the movie theater or the newspapers, wherever my dad was working at the time. That's just what you did from the time I was about 11 on. One Saturday night, we were going home from the theater, and we cut across this vacant lot, and on one side of the vacant lot was the Wolf City Jail, and the city constable hollered at my dad and wanted to show him what he had done, and this was just a little concrete building about 8 by 10 or something, and there. So anyway, he showed my dad. He told my dad he wanted to show him what happened. So he opened the door, and this old man was real drunk, sitting on a bed in there, and he had blood all over him. And so the constable had beat him up with a stick because he was drunk. And so my dad bawled him out. I thought we were going to get put in jail. He was talking real loud to the guy with the gun, but. Anyway, the guy ended up letting the old guy go home, and we went home, and we didn't have any more of those kind of problems. But anyway, after they moved to after my mother and dad and Jeff and Mike moved to Honey Grove, when Jeff was in high school, he was always in they had a little band, and he always did that, and he played football, and Michael, my youngest brother, he played everything, and my dad really enjoyed that, going to all of our ball games and things. He enjoyed that. He still continued with the Masonic Lodge, his whole life. That was a very important part of his life, that and the church. And at one point, he became a lay minister. He passed the test, and the pastor's name was Yarborough there in Honey Grove, and he was responsible for these 2 churches north of Paris. So he and my dad would turn about driving up there. Probably every Sunday, I think my dad would do either one or both of those churches. And during the time they were doing that, both churches built new buildings, and he was always really proud of that. The time he was working with them, that they were both able to build churches, and they both, unlike today, they both had them paid for when they opened them. And there was a lot of times he would fill in for pastor here and there, and he liked to do that. He was very good at it, and he enjoyed it just like he did the work with the Masonic Lodge. There was a time there for several years. He and my mother, they didn't either one. They'd usually eat lunch at home, and then for dinner they'd both come over to Bonham. And there was a couple of places here where he could see people and talk to that he hadn't seen, sometimes for a long time, and sometimes he saw them the night before at the same place. But they had that down pat. And during that time was when they opened a Walmart store here, and he went to the Walmart store, and shortly after that he told me, well, that's going to be the end of the small town newspaper business, he said. And he said that there won't be any stores, so there won't be any advertising, and eventually there won't be any papers in places like this. But he kept doing it because he liked it, and it never was a big money deal anyway. So he did that. he did that his whole life and would still be doing it if he could. He after my dad passed away in 1983, my mother wanted to sell a paper immediately, and my brother and I talked about it and decided that we'd like for her to keep doing it for a while because she was going to be so out of place and not know what to do. So she did the paper herself for 2 years, and then we finally sold it after that. And Mother continued to live in Honey Grove until I guess she was about 89 when she moved to the Woodmore in Bonham, and she really enjoyed that. She enjoyed the people there and visiting with everybody, and she always thought it was funny. She was about the oldest one there, but she stayed up later than anybody else and slept later in the morning. The whole time she lived there, she never had breakfast at the place because they had it too early. I think they had it at 7 or 8 o'clock. My youngest brother, Michael, when he was 22 years old, he was killed in a car accident, and that was my dad really changed after that. My mother too, but especially my dad. It was really hard on both of them. And then after that, my next brother, Jeffrey, he died when he was 52. He had a heart attack, and that was just awful for my mother because I had been living in Florida and Georgia for several years, and my brother had been her main caretaker. So that's the reason I ended up in Fannin County after when I decided to retire. We bought a place here in Bonham, on Lake Bonham, and moved here so I'd be close enough to my mother that I could take care of her. You know, it's like 15 or 20 minutes to her house. And then she decided she'd like to live out there with us, so I had a room and a garage built on the house, so there would be a place for her, a room and another bathroom. And then when we got everything ready, she decided it wasn't time for her to live with us, so she stayed in her house. And then when she got ready to move, she still didn't want to live with me. She wanted to live at the Woodmore, so that's what we did. Back to my father, he, like I said, he did a lot of the Masonic burial rites. He must have been about the only one in North Texas that did them because he did a lot of them, and he was very serious about it. He took it real serious and tried to do the best he could. But he was telling me about one time he was in Sherman, and it was raining a little bit that day, but it had been raining a whole lot. And he said there was the pastor was it was a Baptist pastor, rather short and round. And he was standing at the head of the grave, and all of a sudden the ground caved in, and he slid underneath the casket. And my dad said that he didn't know if he was going to live over it because he was trying so hard not to laugh, and it was really shouldn't have been funny, but he said it took a long time to get that straightened out and get the service done. After Mother got out of the newspaper business, she took several trips that she really enjoyed. They went to Europe on a tour for about 2 weeks. She and her friend Joyce Mullins went, and they also went to Canada one year and went to the Northeast one fall to see the leaves. And she had several years there. They'd take at least one nice trip, and she enjoyed that. She had worked all of her life, either raising children or at the office, so it was good for her to have those trips. And at the time, for about 15 years, I lived either in Florida or Georgia, so it was a long trip for me. So she spent a lot of time with my brother Jeff and his family. They came up, and he basically took care of her for a long time, and she really enjoyed that. And she enjoyed all of her grandkids because for several years, either one or other of my sons was living with her. It's like my 45-year-old. He says that he lived with her when he was 20, and when he was 24, and when he was 28. And now, at the time, he was about 40. He said, "Now I'm about 40, so I won't be living with her anymore." And she always really liked to have boys around there. I don't know, you'd think she was sick of them, but she was always partial to young guys. Back to my dad. At one point, there's a plaque in the Mackenzie Methodist Church in Honey Grove in honor of him for his service to that church and the other Methodist churches in the area. And we were all really proud of that. Because he did, that was a big part of his life, and he really enjoyed it. And my mother, at the same time, or all her adult life, just about, she was active in the United Methodist Women. She did, that was one of her favorite things. She met a lot of people doing that and enjoyed it. My dad was baptized in that church, and then basically, I don't know if he went there again until he moved there from when he was 50-something years old, because his parents had moved from Honey Grove to Bonham when he was a year and a half, 2 years old. And my Aunt Clyde, my grandfather's sister, she was a typesetter at the Honey Grove paper, and until she passed away, she used to come to Wolf City to see me and Jeff from the time we were born until she got sick and couldn't drive anymore. She was like, I had a grandmother, my mother's mother, and I had Aunt Clyde was like another grandmother to me. She was about the best person in the world to me, matter of fact. And she had also helped raise my dad when he was having a hard time at home. And that's about all I can think of as far as my family at this time.